Hello. You are looking at the BMW manufactured Range Rover 4.4 liter engine, and today we're going to talk about and investigate one, in my opinion, one of the most vulnerable systems on this engine. If you go and browse BMW forums, you will also notice that it's a very common problem. What we're going to talk about is the crankcase ventilation system. This is a sealed crankcase ventilation system on this vehicle, and there's one very important component, and that is the valve. This is the replacement part we're going to put in today. This valve assembly actuates, opens and closes with manifold pressure and allows blow-by gases into the inlet manifold. If this assembly becomes clogged somewhere in here, there's a diaphragm in here and a spring assembly that will modulate the pressure. Now if this becomes clogged, or if the diaphragm becomes torn or ripped, then you can have problems with this valve doing its job. And one of those problems is that you may have excess pressure in the crankcase system. One symptom of that will be a strange idle, irregular idle. Also, you'll actually get oil leaking from the valve covers, a very common symptom with this vehicle, because the excess pressure in the manifold, in the crankcase, will push oil out of the valve seals. So you may notice oil along the sides of the engine. This symptom can also manifest itself very catastrophically, in that if you, this actually happened to me as well, and people have lost their engines because of this, that the pressure can build up so high in the crankcase that the oil leaving the system is very dramatic. I mean, we're talking like oil being pushed out of the crankcase seals at an alarming rate, at a rate that looks like someone's pouring, just pouring oil out of the engine. And I've had that happen to me. It's very dangerous. It's a very serious fire hazard, not let alone to mention the possibility of losing the engine. So we're going to tackle this and all the ancillary hoses that go with this. So as we discussed, this is the one-way valve in the crankcase ventilation system. The valve operation is modulated by the manifold pressure, and which is also dictated by engine speed. So it's very important to replace this. I have been told that this should be replaced as frequently as every 70,000 miles, to simply just replace it. This is about a $100 part, and it's very simple to replace, and it should just be a required maintenance step, along with the inspection of all of the crankcase hoses. And so to begin this process, we are going to first remove the part of the engine compartment. We're going to remove the bolt over here, and the bolt over here, and this entire assembly will pull out, and I'll show you how to do that. So we're going to take a 13mm socket, a 13mm wrench, and we're going to remove these bolts. And this is a great trick, because most people, believe it or not, do not know that you can remove this. If you don't remove it, it makes your life impossible. So, it's very simple to remove, and I believe this is the air filter assembly and intake plenum for the HVAC system in the vehicle. So once you remove these two 13mm bolts, it's a very simple process of just lifting this out. First we're going to remove the gasket material. There it comes. Simple as that. Now we've just made the job infinitely much easier, because now we have full access to the rear of the engine. So next we're going to take off the acoustic engine cover. So as you can see, we've removed the intake plenum assembly. Now we're going to remove the engine acoustic cover using a 5mm Allen wrench. And I recommend always carrying an Allen wrench set with you in this vehicle at all times, because otherwise you're not going to be able to get this acoustic cover off. So the acoustic cover simply comes off, and now we have access to the entire engine assembly. And we're going to spend the next hour or so working back here. Alright, in order to gain access to the area we need to work on, we're going to remove this heater blanket. Some vehicles won't have this, but what this is a vehicle-powered kind of electric blanket that serves to heat these pipes, these breather pipes, and prevent them from freezing. Now, a lot of vehicles will display this crankcase ventilation problem in extremely cold weather. And our guess is that water vapor that accumulates in these breather pipes will freeze, block the system, thereby exponentially raising the pressure in the system and causing that catastrophic oil leak that I was referring to earlier. So this must be an issue that BMW was aware of when they designed this engine, and therefore invented this electric blanket assembly for that specific problem. So we're going to remove this. Alright, so here are the breather tubes. You'll want to inspect these. If they show signs of any kind of cracking or gumminess, if you squeeze them and they're not resilient, see how resilient these are, they're rubbery. If they're mushy in any way, have to be replaced. Absolutely do not risk it. As I said before, if these pipes collapse, they can block the breather system. So we're going to be working with two components in the breather system. We're going to be working with the one-way valve, which is on the very much rear of the intake manifold. It's simply going to be unbolted and move straight directly out. And this is the cyclonic oil separator. You want to also inspect that as well. So we're going to remove the tubes, these top breather tubes first. You're just using a flathead on these clamps. And the tube should come neatly out. Save the clamps. If you're wondering how I'm getting such good access to this part of the engine, I'm sure if you were watching me you'd be laughing, because I'm kneeling on top of the engine right now. I've got my knees on top of the right valve cover here. It's quite secure and somewhat comfortable, so don't be afraid to get real intimate with the engine here. So next we're going to start removing some of these components. We're going to be using a 10mm socket to begin to remove the rear valve assembly.